I think that sometimes we forget why we make the art we make. Most of the times we really make it to connect with others or to express something deep inside ourselves. Or sometimes we don't even know what we make it. We just feel like we have to. And it gets caught up in all this bullshit of like approvals and greenlits and money that we forget we actually like to do this shit, you know?
Amen. Welcome to You're Not Gonna Make It. My name is Nico Casavecchia. I'm a filmmaker from Argentina, based in Los Angeles. You're Not Gonna Make It is a podcast about surviving our career expectations, where I sit with successful people to debunk their Insta lives and celebrate the low points of their careers in a quest to find out what making it really means for them and for me. And today I have a guest that is dear to my heart. It's my friend Gabriela Ortega. And Gabby and I recently collaborated in my short film Border Hopper, a film that is in a way her return to acting, because let me tell you, she's been busy, this person. Okay, and this is the part of the podcast where I make you and myself feel bad about ourselves, because I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gabriela, who's extremely accomplished. She's an award-winning writer, director, and actor from Dominican Republic. She's a USC graduate, a 2023 Sundance Screenwriting Fellow, a 22 Sundance Interdisciplinary Fellow, and a 22-23 Academy of Motion Pictures Fellow. And it keeps going. Her short Huella, produced through Rising Voices Fellowship, was an official selection in the 2022 Sundance Film Festival. You start seeing a pattern here. Her film, Beautiful Florida, produced through the Disney Launchpad program. It's available in Disney Plus. And her first film, Puppy, is available to stream on HBO and HBO Max. Here's the thing about Gabi that feels so relevant to this podcast. Despite all her success she had with her work, and even though she's a multi-talented, this woman can write, direct, act, and she does it really, really well. She had to fight her way through rejection, hardship, and all sort of obstacles that we all deal with every day in any creative field. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to know what she deals with and her lows, and how she still manages to put such beautiful work out there. So I hope this conversation is as cool, as inspirational to you as it was to me. Here is my conversation with Gabriela Ortega. Hola, Gabriela.
Hola, hola, hola. Hola, Nico. Hello.
I feel that we should open by saying that our friendship language it's Spanish. Actually, we speak Spanish to each other. So by doing this thing in English, I think we're being such good immigrants, just so people out there value the effort that we're putting into this situation.
Yeah, like my entire dream in this country has been to become a model minority, clearly.
And you're doing such a great job. I'm so proud of you. I see you improving every day and becoming that perfect immigrant that you're meant to be, your final form.
And that's why I'm here today with my white voice.
Okay. Gabriela, I know you very well, I think, but for people who don't know you, I want you to tell us your origin story, the supervillain origin story. I want to start there, and then I'm going to take you through some very dark alleys, but let's just start with the fuck is it that you are here?
Wow, okay. Thrown into the fire. I thought you were doing the intro.
Deep end.
The
intro where I praise you, I will do it at the end, because I never know what's going to happen with the episode.
Well, and I'm ready. I am ready to talk. Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's go. So I'm Gabriela Ortega. I am really happy that I have retaught myself how to say my name in Spanish when I'm speaking in English, because I came to this country, the United States, to be an actor when I was 17, turning 18, from the Dominican Republic. And when I was in acting summer camp, they told me, you need to find an intonation to say your name so that it's digestible. And so I became Gabriela Ortega, which sounds like I'm telling you to watch the Disney Channel. And so I grew up in the Dominican Republic, and I thought if I wasn't Hannah Montana by the time I was 14, I was a has-been, and I was destined to be a lawyer like my mom, which is not a bad profession. I just hate reading that kind of font in that kind of paperwork, like just like New Times New Roman, like all
Yeah.
stuck together. I don't think it's for me,
Let me ask
even
you
though I
something.
do like to read.
Let me interrupt you. So, but just to clarify, so your deadline was 14. That's it. Or so
Yeah,
the
so I
two paths
clearly
were
didn't
like
make
either at
it already.
14 I'm like a Disney Channel child star, or I'm doomed to be a lawyer.
I forgot to preface this story with the fact that I'm a Virgo, so it is very
high
much.
bar, very short timelines. This is it. If I'm not there at 14.
Yeah,
And
so now there's no pressure to be successful because I already didn't hit my deadline.
You already failed.
Yeah.
But which I love and is very suiting for this podcast. But I want to know, when you imagine being that, you imagine that happening in Dominican Republic, or you were living in the US in that
I
image, in
don't
that
know.
dream?
I always try to look back and think, was I dreaming in English or in Spanish? I think I just thought of Hollywood, right? Like I was like, it's Hollywood. I am going to make it in Hollywood. And it's funny because when I actually ended up coming to LA for the first time, I was very surprised to see that the Walk of Fame is like the most horrible place
It's
in
creepy.
Los Angeles. And it took me like looking at the few syringes in the floor to understand that maybe that was not my dream, really. But to backtrack, so yeah, I grew up in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. My parents are hardworking people. My dad is a dentist. My mom is a lawyer. Very much art lovers, though. They sort of always sort of build them very self-made people, big family. Nobody in my family is like an artist, like by profession. But like one of my aunts is an incredible architect who, her name is Carmen Ortega, and she's preserved so much of culture. Like she's the sort of one of the creators of the only architectural magazine, I think, in the Caribbean, and it's like an incredible magazine called Arquitecto. So like I did have like a lot of people in my family that like loved the theater, and like my mom worked with an art dealer for a long time, and sometimes, being a young lawyer, even to this day, like I feel like lawyers are really at the mercy of their clients, and sometimes if there wasn't liquid cash to pay, my mom would get paid in paintings, which is really cool because she now like is like a bit of a collector herself. So, like some of the things she owns,
And those were paintings from local artists.
Sometimes others like Latin American, international, and it's cool because some of these things, right, like it gave me an appreciation for culture within our diasporas, within our countries, because so much of my life growing up was this aspiration to come to the United States, which I ended up doing at one point. But looking back on it, there was always in my family, there's always a deep interest in history, a deep interest in local arts and in music. And, even though nobody's like a professional, everybody really knows about the arts and culture in the country, which I thought was awesome.
And when because I'm always curious about the Latin American countries, especially the Caribbean countries, where are they looking at when they see culture outside of their own countries? And to me, the feeling is that the Caribbean looks to the US more than it looks to Europe or Asia or other
100%,
parts, right?
And that's like, sadly, like we were the first colonized point of the Americas. There's so much history, like people don't even know this, but the first church, the first college was of the Americas, like not America, the Americas, was built in the island. And I say the island because we were colonized by the Spanish, but there's also such rich history with Haiti as well, good and bad, sadly. But what's incredible about Haiti as well is like that's the first Black free republic, right? And so this island holds so much, so many contradictions, so many things that like I'm exploring. So like obviously when I was growing up, the whole thing was to look up. Like we call it Complejo de Huacanagarix, which is an indigenous
so funny
word because it's about this guy, like this indigenous chief that kind of sold us out. And so like every time you look to the other more than what's within, that's kind of like maybe I'm butchering the story. People, please don't come for me. The
It's funny.
thing,
Go
well,
ahead.
it's about like when you look out, that's when you sort of sell out your own culture, your own people
When
for
you're
something
cultural sold
outside.
out, yeah, we call it cipacho in Argentina. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like valuing other countries and other cultures more than you value yours, and kind of like putting yourself down.
And I think, I guess we're in my own innocence. Like, also, mind you, I was, Cris Morena was part of my childhood, okay?
I'm so
Like,
glad that
the
Argentine
telenovelas.
high culture like shape your
Oh my
world
God.
vision,
I feel
worldview.
like I was trying to get an Argentinian accent since I was young. Between that, like Chiquititas, Erreguey, then Rebelde, the
You're
Mexican
embarrassing me right
version.
now, but
Well,
thank
it's
you.
your people, they made it happen, and it
I have to
shifted
accept it.
culture
Yeah.
though. Like that was an aspiration, like Televisa, like that world was also part of what I wanted to be growing up, because it's what we saw on TV. And long story short, it sparked me getting into like acting when I was really young. Like since I was like 13 years old, I was going to improv classes and like performing for my family on Sundays and making like home videos with my cousins.
And when do you decide to take it somewhere else and come to the US?
Well, I was in different like after school programs, and I was a big advocate for the arts at my high school. My high school was very like computer driven and like math driven, and like a lot of like mathletes and like really smart people. And I like, terrible with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So me and like my groups of peers that like the arts, we always like propose like, can we do a play for the cultural fair? And we had like incredible Cuban professors that really pushed us to like read about Lorca and Shakespeare and all these things. So like I was I was the nurse in Romeo and Juliet, and we did Casa de Muñecas, and I was Nora at freaking 16 years old.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and we took it so seriously, and so I like was trying to keep the arts in my life, but I also knew at one point, okay, I'm gonna have to go to college, probably in the DR. I'm probably gonna have to either study communications, or maybe I just get a degree and then study outside of the island for my master's. But then I started researching, and I found out that you could actually major in performing arts in this country, and I never knew that. So my plan then became like midway through high school, I need to get a scholarship. I need to like get some offer to go to a big school so that my parents, they were very supportive. But like one thing is then being like, yeah, I'll support you, take you to these like auditions locally. But another thing is like, oh, you want to study this? Then if you're going to study this, you have to go to a good school.
Yeah.
And so, that put some pressure, and it eventually worked out. It led me to USC in Los Angeles, even though I've never been to Los Angeles. My dream was to go to New York and be on Broadway, but I can't dance. The rumor is true.
You heard it here first.
I can't dance like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I can fake it really well, especially in a Caucasian group of people. But in the sort of big picture, like people can give me like
you were outdanced by others.
Yeah, I was outdanced.
It happened to me too.
I had an audition at this school in Syracuse where the like choreographer of this big musical, Aida, was teaching us the choreography. And then she said, and then at the beginning and at the end, you can add a little something. And a little something to me was like what? Like a like a little turn? Like a pivot?
A humble twist.
Dude, when I tell you people like were raising their legs to their forehead and were doing splits, I got so overwhelmed by the minute the song started that I just like made myself small and walked to a corner and kneeled until the thing finished.
Oh my God.
I did like a performance of like woman in distress.
And those kids are ruthless. They will go for it.
Yeah.
They're like little monsters.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so
I
I had
see.
to like reinvent myself because like back home, musical theater is the thing that kind of was big in theater because like, plays are not like Broadway that run for months and months. Like if anything, it runs like for a weekend, right? So I thought like musical theater was the only way. Um, and then when that didn't happen, the door opened for like, oh, I'm invited to these places to just act and go to like a conservatory. And so I was able to go to USC with a combination of like some aid and some like scholarship money that they were able to offer. It was like the best deal. So it became about that, and just because like my family wasn't mentally prepared to pay what an American college looks like. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty insane. Like if you put in hindsight. But I was very
Especially if you out
fortunate.
of that, you're not going to be a surgeon or something.
Exactly. It's like the risk is too high.
Yeah.
So that's how I got to California, and I that was a long time ago, and now in that process I learned a lot about myself, about what I don't want to be. I think the industry looked very different than what it looked now. Like it was my first
And it's crazy because
experience.
you're talking about like what? Not that long ago. I mean, you're not talking about 20 years ago. You're talking about like 5.
Let's call it that. Let's call it 5.
Let's call it 4.
No, I mean I didn't graduate in the pandemic, so I don't want people to think that. But it was not long ago enough for it to be okay. Like when I went to USC, there was a play in the school program titled The Diversity Play. And you would hear, people be like, what's it gonna be this semester? Black, Asian, or Latino? It would be like a toss up to what we're gonna get. And then obviously most of the kids that weren't necessarily American or like, like immigrants or white, they would end up lumped in this play, which is like kind of like a beautiful kaleidoscope of cultures. Like I got to meet a lot of interesting people in that. But we did some productions of plays that require like an all Cuban cast, and it would be like a Persian guy.
Well,
Like people from all over, that kind of fit the ethnically ambiguous quote unquote demographic.
yeah, I've been there.
It was an interesting, different time. I learned a lot, right? And I got put some limitations and some labels, and I also played into those, right? Because I thought that was the right thing to do. I am the Latina girl,
Yeah.
and I kind of almost stereotype myself at times. So it took a lot of personal growth, and really the difference I think was mentors. Like Luis Alfaro, who's a playwright mentor of mine in school, Oliver Mayer, playwright mentor of mine in school, Denise Blasor, my first director that directed me in a play that I could like feel identified with, gave me my first professional job in LA as one of the daughters in La Casa de Bernarda Alba, a bilingual production of that play, which was really cool. So like you find these people that pull you up and you hold on to them for dear life. And I think that's the most important thing. Rather than money and access, I think young professionals need mentors. And I think it's so important for us to sort of keep that channel going, because I wouldn't be a working artist if it wasn't for these people that took me into a safe space and embrace who I was,
I'm curious because you were talking about labels and self-stereotyping ourselves, and that can happen, at an identity level, or it can happen also in what is it that you identify with as an artist, right? Like what is it that you do? And I met you already. I mean, when I met you already, you were an actor, and I knew that, but like you were already a writer director, and so I'm curious to see that transition. At what point you started learning that you were interested at, I don't know if that writing or directing came first for you.
Well, I had like I said, I had a tough time not to victimize myself, because I didn't take it like that. Like at times, yeah, I felt challenged, but it's also like I wouldn't blame one person for making me feel small, because I think the whole system is designed a certain way that, like, the first kind of rule of thumb when I went to school was like, you need to make yourself into a blank canvas. You need to transform. And as an actor, for sure, you have to transform, but also you have to bring some, I think you have to bring a lot of yourself into it. And so, by my second year of college, I had done this play called Anna in the Tropics about Cuban cigar makers in the 1920s. And it was the first time I saw a piece of theater that like really ignited everything inside of me. It's Nilo Cruz's masterpiece. And it was a role that changed my life. I was the lead of the play and I worked so hard. And I remember, this is how I want to feel when I perform. This is what I want to feel when I'm creating. And so when I was met with those same experiences in my cohort in school, I was the only Latina, which, I didn't have that much of a Latino community at USC. Not that like everything I need to do has to be Latino, but it wasn't like, I didn't feel like I was embraced, and I had a lot to say. And then I was lucky to get representation while in school because of that play, right? And that manager at the time, who was great, because he saw something in me, was sending me material, and suddenly I'm 19 years old and auditioning for CW and CBS and ABC and all these shows, and going to these lots and getting the sticker from the Paramount lot, being like guest off, blah blah blah, and
which is exciting the first 3 times, and the fourth is like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore.
Right,
it feels
and
very
then,
lonely.
Yeah, and I was this like, and I was getting told, literally, I was told by an agent, I was not skinny enough to be the hot girl and too fat to be the funny fat friend. Like, that's how fucked up this industry is. And that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I never found my place because I'm not Michelle Rodriguez. They wanted to make me Michelle Rodriguez or America Ferrera. And they are amazing, but they are them. And I am an immigrant. I am not raised in this country. So I didn't grow up with those concepts, like the notion of who I have to be. Like my idol was Shakira. Like,
which is, it's a strange kind of like ambiguous archetype of a person, Shakira, because she's like the Latin American. I mean, she self-stereotypes herself as well, but yeah, we grew up with different.
But she was just a giant.
Inputs. Yeah, it's never going to be. I think, from my point of view, like it's never going to be. Your point of view will never feel the same as anybody who was born here, no matter how integrated you are in the society or your accent or anything. Like,
and I think that's the thing, right?
Yeah, with different inputs.
Well, exactly, and as immigrants, like then the immigrant identity started forming in me. That was kind of my coming of age of like realizing I was an immigrant, and then that I didn't necessarily fit in the idea of an immigrant that this country had, which I know we've had a lot of conversations about that, right?
And I think it has an overlap with the Latino world, but even the Latino world feels, very foreign sometimes. There's an overlap definitely from Latin American like you and the Latinos born in America, but that overlap is not complete. Is not just one-to-one. It doesn't map exactly, doesn't fit right in. I mean, you as Latin Americans, we have a point of view that feels different.
Latino was created by the United States to segregate us. We are Latin American or Latin descendants of Latin American, and then if you've been born in this country and you have like generations here, then you are American. You're from the United States and you have your roots, right? And obviously, I know, to me, the diaspora keeps so much of our traditions alive, because what happens when we are in our countries is that we reject a lot of the things that make us Dominican, Puerto Rican, Argentinian, Mexican, because we're looking into these imperial countries, right? These huge countries that are dictating culture, right?
Yeah.
And I actually, I hold both identities so close because I grew up with family in New York too. Like, my grandma's, like my great aunt is in Washington Heights for over 30 years, doesn't speak a lick of English, and is like, has created.
That. She's been here for like 40
doesn't
years.
assimilate. But then her side of the family speaks English like they're from New York. They're New Yorkers too, and they're Dominican. And then they cook Dominican food better than we did back home. Like, I don't even know how to cook half of the things they cook. It's so interesting, the things we lose while being in the country, and then what we miss is the thing that we like run away from. And that's the thing that like really shifted my perspective. Because when I couldn't fit in here, when I like traveled so long and worked so hard to make myself this perfect little immigrant, I had to look back at like what am I carrying with me, and that really prompted my writing. I really want, it was an exploration of my identity. It was an idea to like decolonize some of my personal beliefs, like really dig deep into like this idea of our ancestral Taino people, not just like think about our Spanish roots and all the stuff, because like people will cling on to that Spanish root for their life, but not even know who were the original peoples of their country. And so it was a beautiful process, and it pushed me to write my own story. So when I was 20, not even 20, I was turning 20, I lied about my age. And I said I was 21. So I had a fake ID. I had a fake ID from the island. It was so ratchet. It looked so fake. Like, but because it would be racist if people looked at that ID and be like, that's not real.
You couldn't look it too hard, yeah.
Yeah, like I know, like my friends from the island were like, you got into clubs with this? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, in what world? And I'm like, in the US, because like they
do you
don't
still
know.
have it? Do you still
Probably.
It's somewhere.
It was called Gabriela Alejandra Rodriguez.
Wait,
my name.
You changed your name?
Of course, it's a fake ID. Why do I want my real name there?
I guess I never thought about this. So when you have a fake ID, you want to have like a completely new identity. It's not just your age, it's also your name. I never had a fake ID myself.
Well, a lot of people, a lot of us that grew up really fast and
quick learners, you call them.
Yes, very curious about the dangers of the world. First of all, we didn't have money for fake ID, so we just get like it was cheaper to get an old ID from someone, or like someone that looks like you or something. So that's one way to do it. And then I remember it's always like the weirdest people, always have a connect. Like it was like my cousin's friend, and then you end up in some parking lot.
They had like the machine to make it.
I didn't ask that many questions. That's the thing.
The result. The result was like a
result was real. I think they got like a real car. Like they had the thing to make it. It was a little like it looked old. Like the whole vibe was that it looked used.
I guess like a weathered prop.
Yeah, and I totally didn't look
and
21.
It worked. People didn't think twice.
Yeah, people. We call it rebotado when they don't let you into the club. So you're like, when you dribble a ball, it kind of like bounces. Yeah. So if you get bounced, like it's the bouncer, right? So they bounce you off.
The bounce rate was not high, and like it was doing a good job. It was a well done fake ID made in
that only one
Dominican
time
Republic.
Though. Like it was a 99% accuracy rate. I'm also like a girl, and I could be like, and then they'll let me in.
I feel like we derailed this conversation into a lot of illegal activities. But like you discover writing. I'm gonna recap. You discover writing as a way to claim a space that you were not finding in the market, in the world, in the art scene that you were in. And that writing...
And that led to a one-woman show that I wrote. Because I took a one-woman... I started taking playwriting classes in college and film classes. I started taking like kind of self-creation classes in college. And through different mentors, I started sort of reaching out to my professors. They encouraged me. Those like playwriting professors encouraged me. And then I shared my crazy ideas with my voiceover professor, Phil Allen, who is an incredible mentor of mine too. And he got me space in the school during the summer to rehearse. And I brought my friend Alex Alfaro, who is an incredible playwright and mentor and just like another figure in my life, like from my theater life. And I had been cast in his play at the Hollywood Fringe, I think 2 years before. And I really wanted to put something up. At the time, the Hollywood Fringe was really the pinnacle of Hollywood. But I got the Fringe scholarship because it's very white programming, so they wanted to change it up. So they gave me the space for free, and then my professor gave me $500, and I credited him as an executive producer. He hooked me up with an incredible stage manager from school and a sound designer from school. So it was really like a labor of love, and it was just me. And I bought the props with like my summer money, and it had to be a show that could fit into a carry-on bag, because we had 5 minutes to load in and 5 minutes to load out after the show was done, and you just got 60 minutes. And we put it up, and it was a show about the April Revolution in my country and inspired by the women in my family. And it was about a girl kind of discovering her grandmother's revolutionary history back in the Dominican Republic and trying to travel there, and how their lives kind of mirror each other, which is the seed of basically all my work as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I identify a lot of those things and themes in everything I've read from you and I've seen from you, which is very interesting that you had such a
I'm
point of
obsessed
view.
with legacy, like, and like how we pass things down, and it's all like informative of this experience of moving to the US.
It's fascinating that you found that so quickly in your life, because at least for me, I think that I was always, I have this engineering soul, so AKA being a nerd. I always been attracted by execution. And so what always the shiny object in front of me has been execution in all the arts. But it doesn't, it could be in a poem, but it's like, how is this done? Like I would always felt that I had to break things apart to understand them. So kind of like reverse engineering everything. And that is a way to approach the way things are made, but it is not a way to find your own voice and discover what is it that you have to say. And for a long time, I felt that I didn't have anything to say. I remember feeling
I still think about that, like, because then you start putting yourself, I feel like the older we get, we put ourselves in context with the world. Like when I was 19, I was chasing the applause. I was just wanted to be on stage and laugh with people and share things. And I was so eager, which is such a beautiful thing. But then it's funny because we kind of lose all that courage after we go along, because we start getting, like, we start understanding what quality means. We build a taste. We're wanting to be perceived a certain way. We've reached a certain status, even if that's not financial, even if it's just like peer-to-peer respect. Like, you just get, the stakes are higher, Like, I'm 19, nobody knows me in this country. Who cares?
That's fascinating to me because in a weird way, imposter syndrome kicks in when artists are in a more accomplished place, as opposed as when they're starting, right? Like it almost feels that to start, you need that kind of like reckless delusion. But then as you're progressing and you're actually achieving real things and landmarks in your career, then eventually like that's where like you start doubting yourself. And I've seen that like even in very, very famous people, like or very accomplished artists, you see that imposter syndrome kicking in, and then they're comparing themselves to this bar they created for themselves. How do you deal with that?
I'm in it right now, right? And it's that thing. I think a lot of people used to make fun of me for taking a lot of photos and documenting everything. I think I have a terrible memory, or I guess I'm really just afraid of forgetting things too. That I take pictures of everything. I'm a bit of a hoarder with like little notes and papers. If you gave me a birthday card, I have it. I have the poster of your 40th birthday still, like in my house, and it's like the most delicate kind of paper, and like I'm so scared of losing it because it's like almost like saran
well,
wrap
I did that
vibes.
by hand. You should frame it. That's
yes.
not.
Well, I know, but I was saying it's like I have this attachment to memories,
which connects to legacy again, right?
I know, and also this feeling that I have nothing, right? Like I packed everything, that I left everything behind. I'm constantly being like, who am I? Where are my roots? I'm not successful because I left my home, and now like the industry is booming there, and all the stuff I've done is in English, so I'm a sellout. I have this crazy internal dialogue constantly telling me that I'm not that I'm not good enough, and it's real. It's really real. But I think something that gives me one of the things that gives me sort of peace, and it can be dangerous sometimes because then you can get stuck in the loop, is looking back at everything you've done and everything you've shared, good or bad. It just gives you perspective of like, it takes time and it's a journey. And whenever I'm being really mean to myself, I put a baby photo of me as my um wallpaper of my phone to kind of like remind myself to be nice. Like a friend of mine taught me to
You're
do
nice
that.
to others. It's surprising to me to feel that you could find yourself not being nice to yourself in that internal monologue.
Dude, it's the Virgo thing. Because people think that Virgos are anal and they're controlling and perfectionist. And I'm like, yeah, to myself. The bar is my forehead. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
wanna ask you about that because I feel sometimes that neurosis, I would describe it as a neurotic internal dialogue. Just because I'm from Argentina, we're obsessed with psychoanalysis. This neurotic self dialogue could contribute to paralysis in some people. That's the source so many times of chronic procrastination, right? Like when you feel that something you need to create is so overwhelmingly difficult, or you're so afraid of it that you don't go ahead and do it. And in your case, you're a doer. Like you're always doing something, you're always writing or you're always directing. Like it doesn't seem that that self-doubt or imposter syndrome that everybody suffers is something that really stops you from creating. So how do you deal with that moment of irrational paralysis when you are facing a blank page and you got to start climbing that mountain?
oof. That's the question of all questions. That's funny because I'll tell you, like, I'm a little lazy, but then people look at me like, you're not. I really think imposter syndrome kicks in, and then I'm like really mean to myself, like, and like I really would like ruin my own day. And then I think I what I am grateful for is that I am very connected to my emotions, and that comes from my acting training. And it's great if you're me. It's not great if you're dating me, but it's basically like I just cry through it. I like scream about it. I like move about it. I have all these like cathartic emotions that I think are the performer in me, that like even though I don't act as much anymore, I'm like performing life.
So
Um,
basically becoming unbearable to everyone else.
a little bit.
Not to me.
No, I mean, maybe no.
No, but it's great that keep going. I just wanted to insert a joke, but
Yeah,
it's
I
but it's
mean,
I love this. It's
maybe.
really interesting. So you
I
kind
just
of
like,
like
I really like, I would
externalize
go on
those
a walk.
feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I kind of, I kind of like let myself go to like I was like, okay, fuck. And it kind of becomes a little sadistic because I'd be like, actually, this kind of nice can all make me like get an amazing idea. Because what happens is like for example, I was in a really dark place last year in New York, and I would cry on the train all the time. And then one time, this woman came up to me, and she had like this thick Brooklyn accent, and she like took out a tissue, and I thought she was gonna yell at me because you know how New Yorkers are. And she was like, "Just
Or
wipe your
stab
face,
you.
honey. Just wipe your face." And it was like the nicest, meanest thing
Like a
anyone's ever
mean
done.
mom.
Yeah, she's like, "Just wipe your face," and then people, it's gonna be okay. And so like I wiped my face, and I was like, suddenly I realized I'm crying in the subway, but I'm in New York. Like,
You're
just
in New York doing a play, which was amazing, by the way, if you're gonna give some context to that idea.
yes. And then it's like the journey to get together was crazy too, and it's all like balance, right? Like I feel like
But I'm
whenever
really
there's a good
interested.
thing happening, there's also always, that's why I don't judge people,
Yeah.
because I do believe that you can be at the height of your career and an incredible amount of emotional pain. And that's not to say, like, of course, what a privilege to have any of this, but you never know how bad a day people are having, and I think I try to carry that in my work and how I treat, like, I've gotten angry at people, then I'm like, maybe they're having a bad day. Or maybe they're just
Yeah.
an asshole, but maybe they're having a bad day.
I really want to dwell on this because from the outside perspective, what you're describing at crying in the subway in New York, I put you on the subway. Where are you in the Is this a subway story? Yeah, right? Wasn't it?
That was the subway story. There's many
Okay.
crying in many places.
Okay, public spaces. But my point being, from an outsider's perspective, because I saw you on that play and it was so beautiful and your work was great. I think we were starting to talk about the short around then, and to me, on paper, you were doing great. you were pursuing the dream of being in a play in New York. You had like made a hiatus on directing because you were already directing, but you decided to dedicate some time to go and accomplish this dream of being in this play, and it was so, everything was great about it, and I was so proud of you. But at the same time, for reasons that were somehow connected to that or not, like you weren't having that. I mean, it was, you were going through an emotional place that was very tough, and I feel
Yeah.
like we have that. We found that every day, and especially in social media, where we. I mean, this is an obvious statement, but like we see people shine because, of course, everybody is forced by the industry and by kind of like peer pressure to publish all the success or all the good stories, and even the most intelligent and astute people will fall in the trap, me included, or of getting like kind of like constructing this perfect lives and projecting this perfect lives and seemingly successful people. So I'm really interested in digging into this, because sometimes our most successful we are the most miserable at the same time.
And I think my hypothesis would be great art sometimes comes from great pain. That play I did is called How to Defend Yourself. And it's the single most difficult thing I've ever done in terms of acting, because it's such a, it's a play about sexual assault in young people in college, and it requires a lot of courage to do that play. So I always tell people, whenever I do this play, I've done it 4 times now. That play, like in 4 different periods of my life, that play always fucks me up. So like I think what theater does, which is always why I always want to continue doing theater no matter where in life I go, theater kind of opens you up. Because if you're gonna be a theater actor, you gotta sort of open that sacral chakra. You gotta sort of lead with your hips and open yourself up. And so every time I do a play, something cathartic in my life happens. What was happening in that time is like I was going through these huge transitions. I thought I was going to have this New York minute, and it didn't go how I planned. And I was going through grief of a family member, going through a slow death. Like we found out a family member had terminal cancer at that time. So I was like, I had this guilt of like, how come I get to live my dreams where half my family sort of devoted to hospice care at this point, you know? And I think sometimes this profession comes with feeling a lot of guilt at times, because it is this like incredible thing, right? We get to be artists. We get to entertain the world at times. We get to tell stories. That is probably one of the most ancient professions too. Like that's how people survived in ancient times, just telling each other stories. That's how we have histories. And we get to do that. Like how incredible is that we get to do that? And it's not lost on me. Like we're so privileged. Which is why like I think if you're going to take your art into activism, you have to be so intentional about it and recognize that privilege to be able to be an artist first. And for me, at least, it's brought up this guilt of like missed events and like not having enough money to do certain things or be part of certain things, or like schedules being crazy and not having time to have that like work-life balance, and that can deteriorate a little bit your mental health. And I'm so grateful, but there is this feeling sometimes that, and I question my place in this industry all the time. Like, who am I doing this for? Is this really worth it? Like, I used to not ask those questions, like when I was 21, because I just wanted to belong. But now that I feel like, I'm getting a little older, I want to set roots somewhere. I have deep relationships in my life. My parents are getting older. I just want to, I want to be there. And it's hard to balance and to figure it out. And in the last 4 years, we don't even know what the state of the arts has become. And I'm in it right now. I this first quarter of 2024 has been pretty awful, like financially for me, and that's a real thing. And it's also I was talking to a friend about this. I've been in this exciting place for like 2 years, which is I did a couple things really low budget, and they sort of people kind of liked it. I did my first short with $300, and it got acquired by HBO by literally the grace of God. Put it in a film festival. Someone called me and were like, "We want to put your short on HBO," and I'm like, "What?" So that was huge, and then that kind of catapulted my career. I was the subject and participant of academic support from like the Sundance Institute, and a short of mine went to Sundance, and I got all these little wins that like truly mean nothing to most people I know outside of this industry.
It's funny, huh? How like things that for us are everything, for your aunt, you have to give them a lot of
my family
context.
doesn't understand. They literally they still call me actor. They only think I'm an actress, and they also are just so proud that I graduated college, you know?
But I want to touch on that I want to interrupt you for a second, because I think that for a lot of people, those are, because rightly so, they're huge deals, right? Like Sundance, I think this year 13,000 submissions to 50, right? So that's 0.3%, which is about getting in Harvard twice. It's an extreme achievement, and yet it's not enough in this context. So I feel that even for people who have those wins, and it's important to remember that why are you doing this for? Because this is not going to lead to like a lot more. And in the best case scenario, we're questioning, is there a business model behind entertainment?
Well, that's not something I had to learn.
Is question. So you got to connect back to the roots of why you're doing this at an artistic level. But
also, all the artists we love didn't make any money in their lifetime. We forget that. This whole industry thing is kind of Hollywood and new. Like, all the artists that really make an impact in my life growing up, they were poor because nobody cared. And I think there's this balance of like, do I play the game and I do these things and I try to make money, or do I take a harder path of wanting to make no compromise to my values as an artist and my voice, and like have a harder time getting in? I think there's an intersection in the two with like auteur cinema and like.
But even if you try to, I feel that even if you try to be that commercial person that fits the market, it may not happen, or it may not happen the way that you expect it to
100%.
be. So like, I feel that we're now faced with the need of like creating beyond the opportunities that are given to us. And one thing I really like about you is like, you're always trying to create opportunities for yourself, and you're not waiting to get those wins, or you're never waiting around to get to those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm interested to hear, how do you cope with that right now?
Well, again, it's like I let myself feel the block. I can't fight it. If I fight the block, I'm never gonna get out of it. So I'm in it right now. So I'm letting myself be sad a little bit. I'm sulking. I'm in the sulking phase, but I'm gonna get out of it. And I think I get inspired a lot by setting, and I'm an extrovert, so I really do get my energy from my friends and my family. I'm gonna go home for a little bit to connect. And I think that's important. I think that's really important, to just have a safe place to return. And again, I'm so lucky that I have that. But that doesn't have to be something expensive either. It could also be a park by your house, or like a friend that you haven't seen in a while because you've been complaining to yourself for a month. And you're like, damn, I haven't seen any of my friends. Maybe I just hit someone up and I don't talk about shit that has to do with the industry, you know? I feel like so much of the block comes when we only talk with people that are in the same spot as us. Like,
which
it's so
is LA.
Important.
LA it feels like an echo chamber sometimes, right?
But you have to find the people that will refuse that narrative, or just talking about work. Like, we're so much more than that, you know? And I think it's so, so important. And I get that feeling when I see other Caribbean people. My friends literally don't give a fuck about what I do. None of them back home, like, they literally still call me by my high school nickname, Gabi O. And they don't care.
Lucky for you, it's a very cool nickname.
It's kind of like a rapper name. It's just because like I grew up like really close friends with like two other Gabrielas. So it's like it's not rocket science. It's like first letter of your last name.
You got a very cool one though.
Boom, Gabby O. G money. Anyway, that's another life.
That's another phase of yours that.
But I think it's that. It's like connecting to your core and like being really honest with who you are. And okay, this is a recent fix. It's not that serious. Or how they would say in New York, it's not that deep. Like, it's not that deep. Like, really freeing to think of like nobody really cares that much. Like,
we take ourselves too seriously.
100%.
And I always say we take ourselves too seriously. We pour our lives into this. And at the end of the day, the best scenario is like you have a little thumbnail on the carousel of Netflix so people can skip it and just watch. Like, that's your best case scenario. When you know that's your end game, I feel like it's liberating because like you're not gonna make it. It's fine, and you can. But
you know what making it is to me though. Like I mean I don't think about that much, but you know what I took for granted for a long time, because when I was younger, I just wanted to be in the room where things happened, in the room where like the industry, like let's have industry guests and people, and then there were all these empty seats in these theaters, in these screenings, and you focus so much on these people that don't know you that you forget that the biggest supporters of your work will be your friends and your family, and that shit will get you through the whole year. Like I remember when I made my short about my father, the best feeling was sharing it with my family and my grandma seeing it and everybody being so excited, and then when it hit in HBO, my dad was like, I'm famous, and it was like the funniest fucking thing. And then the other day I was in Mexico City with a few friends, and these incredible friends were hosting us, and they're not filmmakers. And they were like, let's do a ciclocine. Let's do everybody shows a short film that they've made. And it was amazing. It was three of us, my friend Diana Valencia, Vicente Manzano, and me. Chile, Mexico, Dominican Republic. And we all showed like little shorts. And we talked about them and asked each other questions, and the friends chimed in, and it was so awesome because it was not about like being in a Q&A with people you don't know and trying to sound smart, but it was actually about, oh my God, you guys, I remember when I shot this shit, I was so cold. I like, or I was like, I had to like run here to talk to this person, or like we were just connecting. And I think that sometimes we forget why we make the art we make. Most of the times we really make it to connect with others or to express something deep inside ourselves. Or sometimes we don't even know what we make it. We just feel like we have to. And it gets caught up in all this bullshit of like approvals and greenlits and money that we forget why the fuck, like we forget we actually like to do this shit,
Amen.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it was so nice.
That was very inspirational, and I think a great place to end this conversation. Because we could talk it's been proven by science that we can be here for 5 hours talking because we've done it before. And
I apologize for how messy my intro was. I was like,
your intro was perfect.
Gave you some rambling there.
No, I really appreciate your point of view, and I love that you're really trying to give a message of reconnecting with doing and creating things over the game, because LA, of course, is so much about that, and it derails you from your own voice and your own creative energy because you're pitching and getting caught in all this stuff. So I really think that it's a healthy message to reconnect with our creativity and get things out, regardless of waiting or regardless of other actors giving us those opportunities, right?
Yeah, and I mean, nothing's in our control. The only thing that's in our control is literally choosing to believe that it's going to get better and it's going to be fine.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.